in the community. Well, as you know, I have been talking about racism, white supremacy for many years. How that got started, because it's always good if you kind of see, well, where did this thing start? I am a general psychiatrist and child psychiatrist, practicing in Washington, D.C. I never thought when I was in medical school that I would become a psychiatrist. But there are forces in the universe that know what you're supposed to be doing, even when you think you're supposed to be doing something else. So I had finished medical school and was, by accident, I got married, thought my husband was going to be able to come to Chicago, where I thought I was going to do a residency in pediatrics. Well, it didn't work like that. I had to go back to Washington, D.C. at the last minute. And a colleague and friend said, well, Francis, you can do a residency in psychiatry and then go back to Chicago and do your pediatrics. Well, I tell people the lazy factor came in. Because when you're an intern and you have to work on 12 hours and off 12 hours and your beeper is always going off. And so when I got into psychiatry, and you didn't have all these emergency calls, so I said, I'm never going to stay up all night again. And so I stayed in psychiatry. And as I said, in medical school, because we were taught Freudian psychoanalysis a long time ago. So my training in my family, I have two sisters, and we were taught you are getting an education not to leave your community. You are getting an education to come back and help your community. So I was never what direction I'm supposed to go in. And so treating black patients and taking histories on patients, take histories on white patients, take histories on black patients, but right in the middle of all black people's histories, just like each and every one of us, everybody who's black, there's racism in your history and in your experience. And so I started thinking, well, wow. Since I decided I'm not staying up all night anymore. And talking to the patients, I got interested in psychiatry by talking to patients. And then when I saw racism in the middle of everybody's history, I said, I have to understand more about racism. I went to Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And at that point, integration meant one black girl, one black guy per class. So I was the only black girl in my class. And interestingly, when I got to Antioch, older students would come and say to me, did Corey send you? Yeah, that was as confusing to me. Did Corey send you? I didn't know who Corey was. Corey was no longer there, but in other words, if a black comes, the former black must have sent you. It turns out that Corey was Coretta Scott King, Dr. Martin Luther King's wife. So at another level, maybe Corey did send me. But I didn't know who Corey was. I don't think that she graduated from Antioch. But to go back to when I was an undergrad, I thought I was a Marxist. I was all into Marxian theory, which was intriguing to me because Marx tried to tie everything up, but he was tying everything up around economics and class struggle. And I went home one day sitting at the dining room table, parents and my grandmother, my sisters. So, you know, when you're 16, 17, 18, that age, I said, I'm a Marxist. And my grandmother said, the more education they get, the dumber they get. So then I got to training in psychiatry and seeing racism in the middle of black people's history. And I said, I've got to understand racism beyond what Karl Marx had to say. And so they say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I'm training in psychiatry, looking for other answers, because the training program that I was in, all white staff training, 2 or 3 black residents, they actually told us that black people didn't have the intellectual potential to benefit from psychotherapy. That the best you can do with black people is give them medication. Now that may sound extreme. That may sound extreme, but that's what is being practiced today. But in my training, that did not compute. So I was still looking for these answers about racism. I've read everything in the world about racism. I'm still looking. And so I was doing a fellowship in child psychiatry. And I would sit at my desk in the evening writing up cases. And I would get a voice. So when people say they got a calling, don't throw that away. I would hear this voice. It wasn't in here, so I knew I wasn't crazy. But it was an experience here. Go to the Black Power Committee meeting. It wasn't loud, it wasn't disturbing, it was just go to the Black Power Committee meeting. I didn't go to groups. Over and over and over and over again, I would hear this. So I finally went to a Black Power Committee meeting, and that's when Stokely Carmichael was in Washington, and all the people who had come through SNCC in the civil rights movement, a lot of them were in Washington. And so after one meeting, we had gone to somebody's apartment, and people were sitting on the floor eating African food. And I hear a gentleman on the other side of the room say, racism is a system. And my brain clicked. It was like a light bulb going on. That was Neely Fuller Jr. Somebody has his book. Yeah. Okay. Okay, the person over there has his book. So I started talking to Neely Fuller. He was not a physician. He was not a psychiatrist. He was not a college graduate. He was a guard at the Bureau of Engraving in the District of Columbia. But he had been writing about racism beginning around in 1954 during the Korean War. He said that he was on a radar site in Japan, you know, like way up on a mountaintop. Sitting there, that was his assignment. And he said everything that was going on in the States, segregation, desegregation, all of that stuff didn't make any sense sitting on that mountaintop. And he started thinking, what we are dealing with is a total system structure. He had a suitcase that you could carry, orange suitcase, and he had all of these precisely printed. You know, the notebook paper that has 3 holes on the side. So he had all of this documentation printed. I had another friend who was doing a residency in orthopedic surgery. His name is Carl Hutchison. He's deceased. But Carl was doing a residency in orthopedic surgery. And he said the 3 of us would sit in my apartment, 743 Fairmont, apartment 106, and talk until 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, when you're that age, you can stay up till 3 and then go to work the next day. So we would talk and talk Marxist, and we, you know, back and forth and back and forth. And so I said, well, first of all, Carl was so impressed with Neely Fuller's body of work. He said, I will type this in between surgical cases. Wow. So he typed it. I kept saying, this has got to be, we've got to get this published. If anybody had told me you're going to work with some black gentleman 17 years to make certain that his book got published, but it took 17 years, and his book finally came out. But, and I hope everybody in this audience, I consider the work that he did, saying we're dealing with a system, is probably the most important thinking in the 20th century. Remember, Dr. Du Bois had said, the problem of the 20th century is the question of the color line between the lighter and the darker races of mankind. So mid-century, that was in 1903 that Dr. Du Bois in his book, Souls of Black Books. Along comes Neely Fuller, 1954. And Fuller says we're dealing with a system. And that system was about the power equation of white power over non-white powerlessness. So then I used to say, but why would they do it? See, that's a psychiatrist and that's a 2-year-old child. See, children, you know, when they start talking and their brains start clicking, and so you say something to them and they want to know why. Why? The why, you know, when older people get tired, don't get tired anymore. You may have to say, I don't know the answer. But why is the switch happens? What is the cause? And so Mr. Fuller used to say, and I said, but why would they do it? And he would say, Francis, forget the why. And Mr. Fuller said that the system encompasses all areas of people activity. Economics, education, he'd even put it in economics, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And that it controls patterns of thought, speech, and action. And to maintain this power equation, as I said, a white power over a relative non-white powerlessness. Well, I persisted in my thinking, like I tell my patients that a good psychiatrist is like a behavior detective. In other words, the patient presents with a problem. And so I feel that my job as a psychiatrist is to help tunnel deeply and help the person understand why the behavior exists, because then that's insight. And if they can grasp the why, then they have a stronger instrument in changing the behavior if they want to. So I persisted with why. And I tell people I was actually in my kitchen, 743 Fairmont, cooking and doing the dishes. And see, when you put that question in the back of your mind and you're serious about the question, it wasn't causing me a headache. The question. And so, as I said, I'm in the kitchen, hands in the dishwasher, cooking, and the brain computer printout came. Now, what came to my mind was that within this system framework, there were certain things that were constantly, and was that black people are supposed to be genetically inferior to white people. Well, if you read enough and stay in school long enough, you learn reading. Reading is more important than watching TV. See, TV is what somebody else selects for you to look at. Reading, and if you fall in love with books and reading, then you go to bookstores, and you go to libraries, and you build yourself a library at your house where you have all kind of books that are falling on the floor and everything. But, you know, just going, like I would go to the library sometime and just stand and say, now, what books want me to pick them up? Do you see? And so you're kind of, they call it the spirit guide, to things that you need to put your hand on and look at. And so I started thinking about things that I had learned. First of all, just a short period of time studying genetics. You learn that there are genetic dominant traits and there are genetic recessive traits. And the dominant always top the recessives. So I thought about that, factor one. I thought about people of color always being called minorities. But the facts on the planet that we live on, third planet from the sun, is that the overwhelming majority of people, 9/10 of the people on this planet, have colored skin. Colored by melanin pigment, which is a black pigment. If you have a whole lot, you look crystal black. A little bit less brown, a little bit less so-called red, a little bit less so-called yellow, and almost none at all, or none at all white. And so I said, well, wait a minute. We're not genetically inferior. Black is genetic dominant. People of color are not minority or minorities, but the vast majority of people on planet Earth. And I actually stood in the kitchen and I'm there by myself. That's it. That's the answer. That when people, I don't know if I can write on this. See, think about this as our planet. And this is North, and this is Europe. And Christopher Columbus is known for starting the voyages coming out, white people coming out of Europe and discovering the planet. And I say that when they, you know, Columbus was the leader, and then other people followed him. And what they discovered was that everywhere there was colored people everywhere. That's the only place where white people were. And so if the colored people were overly generous with their hospitality, so the people had food and drink, and maybe some sex was thrown in. And if the men waited around 9 months, they discovered, you gotta fly, razors. But they discovered that all of the children ended up looking like their mothers. And they didn't have to have a fancy building to have a genetics meeting. But it became clear that if these men started going from south to north, there could be a problem. We could call it the Obama problem. You know, they call the fact that people started buying all kinds of guns after President Obama became president. They started buying guns. And they call that the Obama effect, but I call this the Obama problem, in that President Obama's mother's white, was white, his father was black. Because black is genetically dominant, he could only end up being black. You see, because of the genetic dominance versus the genetic recessive trait. And from that, I could see what the problem was. Neely Fuller said that racism was about maintaining the power equation of white over non-white. Well, this was absolutely necessary because the genetically dominant people of color could cause the disappearance of white. Do you see? And I concluded that's what racism is all about. That racism is a total system structure structured by people who classify themselves as white, consciously and or subconsciously determined, controlling patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response for the ultimate purpose of white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on planet Earth. And planet upon which the vast and overwhelming majority of people are people of color. And all of the people of color are genetically dominant compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people. And unbeknownst to us, because people of color all over the world, wherever white supremacy has become the dominant force, and that's all over the entire planet, the people of color learn before they learn how to read. If you are black, what? Everybody knows that. If you are brown, stick around. If you're yellow, you mellow. If you're white, you're white. Unbeknownst to us, because people learn that before they go to the first grade, that this is the color code for white genetic survival. The more color you have, the greater the threat. So that's why the darkest colors have to be at the bottom of the barrel. I just started making some t-shirts, and one of them says, black is most beautiful. The other one says, African genes, G-E-N-E-S, wear with pride. Everything else begins to be clear. See, black people, as black people, we go around greeting each other saying, hey, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Because we don't know what's going on. See, the brain will always push. See, for you to function effectively, you have to deal with reality. See, God forbid if a fire was to break out in this building and we're all afraid of fire, so we say, oh, it's not fire, it really is roses. You see, then we will all burn up and we will all be dead. You see, we have to face reality. So I said, if we begin to understand this, everything else, and Neely Fuller has an expression, if you do not understand white supremacy racism, what it is, and exactly how it works, everything else that you think you understand, I don't care if you had 29 PhDs, will only confuse you. That's right. Because the system does not reveal itself. It lies. It says this is a democracy. Everybody is equal and everybody has equal opportunity. Well, this is what makes black people's blood pressure go up. Because we keep looking for that equal opportunity. It exists. You cannot have equal opportunity if you have a segment of the people who with equal opportunity would exist. See, in other words, when Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slaves with the help of others, but if he had said, now that are going to have social equality with all of the white people. So that would mean that everybody would just ignore color. See, everybody would be so-called colorblind. I say as a white supremacist, that term means blind to the interests of colored people. You see, but if everybody just blended, we would have the Obama effect, and there wouldn't be any white people, other than the new mutations to albinism. In other words, white, this is not Cress Welsing genetics. White skin is a mutation from black. It is the failure of the melanocytes, the cells that are given the task of producing pigment. If a specific enzyme called tyrosinase is missing, then those cells are there, but they cannot go forward and produce the end product of color. So now the paleontologists and anthropologists are not arguing anymore. Black people are the mothers and fathers of everybody on the planet. Black people and crystal black people, I'm talking about the highest level of black, is the only color that could produce all of the other colors. Because if you go from most black to a mutation to albinism, you cross the albinism plus most black, and you get all of the colors in the middle, like this orange looks like. This is not all these different shades of brown, because of the busy work of slave masters. Make no mistake. See, African women were not raping slave masters. You see, but slave masters were having a field day producing all of the colors and then going further and telling the people, I'm glad my grandmother, great-grandmother was raped, because now I don't look black. I mean, this was the mindset, unbeknownst to people who were analyzing this situation in depth. Are you all following? Okay. So I say that if we understand this key, and we understand that effectively we're like at a chessboard. You see where you have a white side of the board and a black side of the board. The object of the game of chess, because the white side of the board always moves first. So white is playing offense, defense. Black has to play defense, offense. The object of the game of chess is for the white king to checkmate the game of chess, is for the white king to checkmate the black king. But that is essential for white genetic survival. So I decided after Charleston, South Carolina, that I would dedicate my lectures and remarks to the 9 black people who made a blood sacrifice for us to wake up. You see, all of the elements were present in that great tragedy. You see, you had a young 21-year-old white male who had written a manifesto laying out clearly that we have to kill you for us to survive. Do you see, and following it up with the often stated, only thing that the black man wants is to rape a white woman. Do you see, now that had to be at the center of the desire for white genetic survival. And it's fascinating to me how CNN just led the charge, so to speak, We're talking about racism, white supremacy, and what the young white male did in Charleston. And so now the news is just covered with Bill Cosby. You see, in other words, his action has been completely wiped off the news so that people can focus on the fact that Bill Cosby is supposed to have raped 40 women. Maybe it's up to 60 now. You see, but that just goes along with what white females say in the system of racism, that their ideal mate is tall, dark, and handsome, with kidnapping. Now, I'm not justifying any mistreatment, but seeing the whole story. It's like a white male said to me, Dr. Welsing, do you know what white men say? And I said, no, I don't. He said, white men say they're not men. Until when? Until they have had sexual relations with a black woman. Now, see, once you understand racism, then all the things that you see, all the phenomena that look like they're not related to anything begin to become clear. See, even, they might start calling it Cosby candy, I don't know. But see, they even named candy, chocolate candy with nuts, as Mr. Goodbar. Chocolate candy is the favorite candy all over the white world. See, the darker, the richer, the southern brown. See, this is the culture speaking. And one of the things in psychiatry, and especially what I say is old school child psychiatry, where you're taught to watch children in the playroom and watch their symbolic play with toys, to understand what they are really thinking about when they can't tell you. You see, so the symbolic things that people do, it's just like wanting chocolate kisses. At the same time, he's about to rape me. You see, all of this history, our history of lynching. You see, the history of justifying lynching was always related to the statement that a black male thought he wanted to think about looking at a white woman. Or a 14-year-old Emmett Till saying something to a white female would be the justification for tracking down the black male and lynching and castrating him. There's no history, none at all. There's no history of black men attacking white men's junk. No history whatsoever. We have blatant history of white males. Some people better be careful. White males attacking white males attacking black males. Again, everything that is important in the culture, you will find is tied to the understanding of what it is that I'm stating. And I've been sharing with people that, you know, no matter where I go, I could be in the supermarket or somebody might come up to me and say, Dr. Welsing, you're Dr. Welsing, aren't you? Yeah. They'll say, you don't know me. I first heard you 20 years ago, and I knew you were crazy. But now I understand what you're talking about. See, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to kind of catch up. So one Sunday, it was so quiet. See, and when it's quiet, you can think. This is why the system of racism tells black people, your music is you see, so loud that it causes sensory overload. It will cause the brain computer to really shut down. Like, black people are in so much stress and so much pain that they really want something to knock it out. Using sound as a narcotic, but that doesn't facilitate thinking. So one Sunday, so I just said to myself, oh, it's so quiet. See, that's when your brain can work. And then I said, wow, what's happening? And then it occurred to me that it was ball games. And I said to myself, there's something about ball games that is deeper than what we think. See, ball games are the most important activity in the culture. Well, see, if you are interested in genetic survival, then you got to be interested in this. This is not a man with legs. This is a schematic drawing of male genitalia. Testicle, phallus, testicle. What is the colloquial name of the testicle? Balls. Balls. See, I don't make it up. So then I thought, oh, there are 2 series of ball games. Now don't tell if you read the book. See, this is something, the significance of balls. People are looking at balls all the time. The culture says, keep your eye on the ball. But we are not accustomed to thinking that there are 2 series of ball games in the culture that people are looking at all of the time, but they don't see it. See, if your brain is thinking, we're in a democracy, you won't see it. If you know that you are in a system of racism, white supremacy, that is about white genetic survival, then you might see these 2 series. The 2 series, and they're not made up by Cress Welsing, and they're not made up by any black person. This is coming out of the white brain computer because it refuses to talk about reality. And so the brain truth crushed the earth is going to rise. So the 2 series of ball games are big brown and small white. That is paying tribute to the genetic dominance of the testicles of men of color, black men in particular. You see, so big brown is football, basketball, bowling ball. Are y'all with me? Some people put soccer over here because it's got a little white cover but the black shows through. Small white marbles.
Tennis. Yeah, pool.
See, it even goes further than that. I said the culture that is not created by black people. In the culture, white females say their ideal mate is tall, dark, and handsome. So these brown balls, the football goes into some white upright legs.
Okay.
And then you have white girls in short skirts dancing on the side. The black girls can't get on the squat. And then you have a whole audience of voyeurs, mostly white males, looking at white females being satisfied by big brown balls. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
See, I didn't think it. So what game do the most powerful white men play? How is that game played?
Watch out above up there. You guys gotta watch out. It's
Gonna fall.
That's okay. You can't focus. He's up there working. He's up there working on it.
Oh, listen, you want to be careful because that ceiling is going to come down.
There's nobody there. Somebody up there working.
Get a little white ball. You must go forward.
Yep, you must go forward. Don't be distracted. Let the white stuff fall.
It's going into a hole in black Mother Earth. You see, carrying out the concept. And it even goes further because golf courses are designed. That's big business, the design and the layout of the golf course, right? And so the golf course, let's say it's laid out, and the little ball can get misplaced and it can go into the rough. And see, there's some adults who know that. It can go into the water hole. That's not where it's supposed to be. It can go into the sand trap. See, there are 3 holes in female genital anatomy. There's only one right hole. And so all of that in talking about. The one topic that you cannot talk about in the system of racism, white supremacy, is racism. White supremacy. You see, if you try to talk about it, somebody, well, she's playing the race card. Anything to pull you away. The incident in Charleston happens, and immediately the news has to be switched to bad black man. Raping white female. You see, now what he did or what he didn't do, I don't know. But some of the females kept coming back. And these were not little children. These are all adult people. See, and I heard some discussions, I don't know what's true, but a whole lot of stuff goes on in Hollywood. And pills being given, cocaine being given to enhance the sexual experience. Now, unless he was forcing these pills down somebody's throat, they were taking them. Right. You see, so I'm not the judge. I don't know what the story is, and I'm not saying that he was doing anything that people didn't know about and harming people. Of course, that's not correct. But I'm talking about the bigger picture of the dynamics of racism and how to get black people diverted from what they need to be focusing on. Because when there is a fear of genetic annihilation, that one group of people has such powerful genetic material that they can cause another group's annihilation. The answer for the people who are afraid is genocide. Right. Let me make that clear. Genocide. We are sitting and looking at genocide take place right in front of us. Anytime the men of a people are being killed, those people are under genocide. There's no such thing as a people consisting of just females. See, I don't care how much anybody preaches same-sex marriage. Any people that want to project their existence thousands of generations into the future cannot say male, male, female, female is the same as male, female. You see, and I could be the psychiatrist to white people. See, I would say you need to be very careful. See, white people are not operating with insight. They are operating with having developed a power machine to kill whatever number of people they need to kill wherever they are in the world. But that's not operating with insight. You see, but if I were the psychiatrist, I would say you need to be very careful. Because if you don't like the way that you look, as evidenced by your suntan, and evidenced by putting tattoos all over your body. See, it's like inking up or tanning up. If your brain computer has decided, I don't like the way I look, then you will not be in the business of procreating. You will be in the business of causing your own demise. Do you follow what I'm saying? So let me just go back here. Front view of male genitalia. Lateral view. If you turn this around 90 degrees, you have this. And what is that? A gun. And what is the gun called?
The great
It's great
equalizer.
equalizer. Meaning, my genetics are not as powerful as yours. Must create weapon can do same thing. So that's the gun. You see, if you remember some of the pictures of Darryl Storm Roof, where he's sitting with the Confederate flag and a big black gun. See, maybe all of those pictures from the East Coast haven't hit here.
No, they don't even.
You see, which then takes us to see, even the culture will call, in the white culture, white men will call themselves sons of guns. Son of a gun. Because the gun has replaced in their thinking what their genetic material will not do. Okay, so looking even further, that all the talk about the flag, this is the flag. You gonna see that? See, the brain will produce abstractions. So this is a lateral view of the male genitalia. That's the same as this. All of the flags, basically, of the white cultures are red, white, and blue, or blue and white, or red and white. The flag stands symbolically for what is in the testicles. For people who classify themselves as white, it means white skin, through which you can see red arterioles and blue veins.
Yeah. That's right.
That's why the flag is not something you can tamper with easily. So after the flag, people talking about the flag coming down, then black churches were burned. You see, black people have tended, because they're not focusing on total system structure of racism, they will start talking about police brutality. The police are simply the first line of defense in a culture. The second line of defense is the National Guard. The third line is the Army. And so the police are just the people who are authorized to commit justifiable homicide. See, in medicine, you don't have patients just talking about the symptoms. You have to get down to the disease. Because if you're just focusing on the symptoms, the patient will die. You've got to say, what is causing X, Y, Z? Let me find out, if I can, what is the cause. And I say that when we see all of these killings all across the country, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, all of the killings that are taking place of black males. See, they used to lynch and castrate one black male who looked at a white female. Now you have the highest incidence in the history of this country of white women with black men. You see, that is not passing by without notice. The white collective that is concerned consciously and or subconsciously with white genetic survival. Are you following me?
Yeah.
You see, so while they want to say post-racial, make no mistake. See, this is why it's important to have a definition. I have the only one paragraph definition of racism, white supremacy. And I've advertised in the newspaper, does anybody have a better explanation? I've even offered $1,000. Does anybody have a better explanation? Why? Because in my explanation of what racism, white supremacy, if it's not right, I don't need it. But I'm the only psychiatrist in the United States who has talked about racism for 40 plus years. Yes. I'm the only psychiatrist in the world. It's a tragedy. This is a tragedy. See, my graduation present from college, my parents said, what do you want for graduation? And, you know, sometimes maybe I needed a psychiatrist because I didn't say, get me a car, get me some clothes. I said, send me to, this is 1957, 12 years after the end of the Second World War. And I told my parents, I want to go to Germany and live with German people and ask them if they understand what they allowed to happen to their neighbors. And I was in a work camp outside of Frankfurt. And young German people were going around doing Heil Hitler with swastikas. And I would say, don't do that because I'm the only black person they were. They had an article in the newspaper, the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Brown Francis from Chicago was here. You see, but what I learned from that experience is that people can appear nice on the surface. Friends can come and live in our house, but they will allow their neighbors to be killed under certain circumstances. See, I advocate that every black person should study the history of Nazi Germany. See, because there has been the focus on the religion of some of the victims. If you read Hitler's work, he said, I don't care about their religion. I'm not interested in religion. He said, I'm going to kill 11 million Semites of the Jewish religion because they're not white. Now, they may look white, but for white people, like I some time ago talked to a person from Scandinavia, and the white person said, in Scandinavia, we don't consider Italians nor Jews to be white people. See, in other words, and that kind of takes me to the case in Spokane, Washington. Thank you. The young black woman who wasn't certain who she was. See, but I don't knock her. Because when I saw in the news a picture of her mother looked like a black lady who's passing. See, if you are a person of a certain age, like I'm 80,
Looking good.
but I'm only saying that just means that my generation of people were closer to the generations immediately after slavery, where you had tons of black people who could pass for white because of the activity of the slave master. So you had a lot of people, families and family members, the ones who thought they could pass and get ahead, well, we're going to pass. And then the ones, you had some that could pass for white, and they decided they weren't going to pass. You see, but you have people who decided. My grandmother had a cousin they came up from Vicksburg, Mississippi. That's where my paternal grandmother's people came from. Slave master producing some brown black people. And so my grandmother had a cousin, and she was like my grandmother, but she said, now Lou, when you come to visit, please go to the back door, because they don't know I'm black. I mean, you have to see, in other words, if we knew our history, see, just look at this audience. There's hardly anybody in here who's crystal black. Meaning the slave master's brush has been all over this audience. And all over black people. You're seeing black people falling in line. Don't marry anybody darker than yourself.
Wow.
All of that stuff. You see, everybody hug yourself.
Hey.
Now repeat it. I love myself. I mean, I really love myself. And I thank the Creator for giving me the courage to talk about difficult subjects. And racism is the most difficult subject. Okay, so in other words, see, I'm not talking about racism so that black people can get on a jag about hating white people. That's cheap. The purpose in talking about racism, white supremacy, is that racism, white supremacy is the most vicious, most terroristic system that has ever been on the planet. That sees as its enemy the majority people on the planet. So the point in talking about it is so that racism as a total, local, national, global system can be replaced with a system of justice. Justice meaning no one is mistreated. No one is and those who need the most help get the most help. So that's the purpose of talking about racism. But look at this word. A-N-E-R-I-C-A. And right sitting in that word is the phrase, I am race.
Right.
See, now, how does that happen? Don't know. Just like the word Jesus, J-E-S-U-S. In Ebonics, that's just us. Melody. And one of the things that I was saying is that physicists now are trying to find the perfect black. The Egyptian goddess Osiris was called Lord of the Perfect Black. See, black is a superior absorber of energy. And the melanocyte is an energy receptor. It's just like our eyes are energy receptors. Our ears are energy receptors of certain frequencies. Now, many people have heard about the Dogon, a particular group in Africa, and where they knew about the star system Sirius. And they could tell that there was a star that the Western scientists had not discovered. And so it's like, well, how could these primitive people, see, that's a word that they want to throw in. You see, it could be that just like the pyramids were put up by black-skinned people. And I have a thesis that that was before black people were taught to hate black. And before, when they knew the power of the pigment that can absorb most frequencies. I theorize that if you can absorb it, you can send it out. But if you hate the pigment, you certainly can't use that instrument. You see, we've been taught to hate the instrument. George Washington Carver, they said that he was a wizard. And he was a genius. He could tell what plants could do. And they asked, how are you able to do what you do? He said he goes out in the quiet of the morning. Quiet, everybody? Quiet. And he said the plants talk to him and tell him what they can do. George Washington Carver was crystal black. See, if we pay attention to the old people, well, the old people would say the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. If it ain't got no soul, it ain't got no use. Now, years ago, I wrote a paper called Melanin, the Neurochemical Basis for Soul, S-O-U-L. See, when they say that black people have soul and are sensitive, that means that we are bringing in more energy. We're sensitive. White people will say, you all are sensitive, because they're missing the ingredient of sensitivity. So I just say, and to the extent, see, right now, basic programming under white supremacy, black people, and gentlemen, I have to say this to you. See, in the rap artists and the hip hop people, you want somebody white. Neely Fuller even says, when a black man is poor, he wants a job. This is under white supremacy. When he gets a job, he wants luxuries. When he gets luxuries, he wants a white woman. I had a friend years ago who was at Harvard. He became a tenured professor at Harvard. He said, Francis, a white woman goes with the Harvard degree. So what's the point in getting a Harvard degree? See, people are looking astonished. See, black people operate on the same principle, just a couple of notches down. See, show me a multi-millionaire, billionaire black man who has gone in search of a crystal black lady. Are you all with me, or am I? Embracing ourselves so that we are able to tell the truth to ourselves. See, in other words, as long as we have to lie to ourselves, we're going to be a crippled people. See, we are being lied to by the system of racism and white supremacy. So when we then lie to ourselves, we are in total trouble. So this is the point of deciding that we're going to respect ourselves and embrace ourselves and embrace our truths, our weaknesses and our strengths. But mostly, like some of the things that I've heard from Neely Fuller over the years, he said the study of history, instead of talking about when we were kings and queens, we need to be studying where did we make our mistakes. See, what mistakes did we make? See, like the good student The good student gets an exam paper back, and it's a big red F on it. All the answers are wrong. The smart student, the first reaction might be to crumple that paper up. The smart student will get to the wastebasket, straighten that paper out, and say, where did I make my mistakes? Let me go and sit and talk to the instructor. Point out to me, what is it that I don't understand? You see, in other words, to admit weakness and vulnerability is a strength. See, I advocate, can you imagine a national conference being called, and black men decide to call this meeting instead of a march? Thank you. They say they're going to meet. Now this is big national advertisement, big signs all over the country. Some people come from Africa when they see the subject. And the topic is going to be, we are afraid of the white man. Now see, most people, I can feel the vibe. Some people are kind of, what is she talking about? See, the white man can't say, look, black men, I'm frightened to death of your genetic power. That's why I make that gun. Because you have power that I don't have. I have to make an instrument. Yours is God-given. Now, he can't say that. You see, that's why one of the black poets wrote, they don't come by one, they come by 10. See, 10 to 1. So to be able to tell the truth, and if you've never seen respect, you let black men call a conference like that. The New York Times, CNN, BBC, all the major news media all across the world will be coming and saying, well, what are you going to do about it? You've announced your fear. What are you going to do? And the black men just say, well, we're not sure. We're just beginning to talk about the problem. And they will start saying, well, wait a minute now, what do you want us to do? We haven't gotten that far. You see, but in other words, see, the power of truth is really strength. To lie is the evidence of weakness.
Right.
See, I'm afraid of white people. I am afraid of white people. Nearly everyone says that's intelligent fear. See, people ask me all the time, aren't you afraid of what they would do? I said, but I'm more afraid if we don't understand. So the fear that we will not understand what is coming towards us is greater than any fear that I might have about personal safety. You see, which doesn't mean, as I said, I don't consider I'm courageous, no. But it's like we have to let our respect for ourselves, see, on a 0 to 10 scale of self-respect, where do you think we are?
2, 3.
See, we could be at -1 100. See, we're afraid to even think that God might be black. See, what about that? Now, the white scientists will tell us that their word for the most powerful force in the universe is a black hole. They are investigating dark matter. They're looking for perfect black. Because that is a superior absorber of energy. And if you can bring it in, you can push it out. You see, but see the vibe, and it's okay. That's why we have to do mirror practice.
That's right.
Go home, take off all your clothes. Don't stand in front of the window, stand in front See, and just decide, look in the mirror and say, I think I'm going to decide to like my black self just as I am. See, for white people, if they would decide that they're going to like themselves even though they don't have color, they would be better off. See, then they wouldn't, well, wait a minute, I may be a mutant. See, now let me say this. I gave a talk some time ago in New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire. Whole audience like this of white people. There was a few black students who had invited me. So I said to the white people, look, maybe we as black people owe first child abusers. Because we put you all out. Come on. See, white people, in their history, they say that Western civilization began in Rome. And the founders of Western civilization were Romulus and Remus. So go home and get your encyclopedias and pull out Romulus and Remus. In Romulus and Remus, the symbolism is that they were suckling on a wolf. The founders of Rome. So who has to suckle on a wolf but an abandoned child? The wolf is a canine. White people say their best friend is a dog, who is also canine. See, and anybody who's in a gentrifying area can see where the white people all have their dogs. The dogs have dog parks. And they glare with malice at the black people. And if you reverse the letters in the word dog, you have the word God. So I say all of that's not lost. And I said to the white people, let us apologize to you. You see, but sometimes parents make mistakes, if that was a mistake. And they can apologize, but they don't let the children keep on running the house. And like his rights. This is many years ago. And Oprah was talking about losing weight. And Shirley MacLaine said, no, 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 no. You don't want to lose weight, you'll lose your show. I mean, nobody wants a skinny mammy. See, so what did the white people do? This is Welsing theory. Here's the continent of Africa, a gigantic continent. Here's the Mediterranean, and here are these little tiny countries of Europe. The paleontologists and anthropologists are saying that human life began here. And when the black people started producing mutations to albinism, just like that, the black people attacked the albinos in Africa. They put the people out. And if you go straight north of Africa, you can either go that way or you can cross this way. You're in Europe. And the center of Europe is called Germany. So I say that after the white people gathered themselves up here, and they said, now we're going to come right back, put the black baby out in a box, and they're going to nurse the white baby. And we're going to beat them until we get tired. Are you all with me? Yeah. So what if black people held a conference instead of talking about weed? Right? If the black people said, you know what? We understand why you enslaved us. That's right. See, if you talk, the psychiatrist has to talk to people. And what do you think the child who is abandoned by the mother feels? Yes. See, the fantasy is that mother gives up child, 25 years later, child finds mother, and they embrace. What's the reality? No. They want to kill their mother. Child finds mother. Child beats mother to death. Are you all with me? Yes. See, there's no reasoning that the child can be given that justifies abandonment. Now, there might be all kinds of, see, I feel the vibe drop, but don't feel bad. See, the child wants to beat the you-know-what. Well, why did you have me? Part of the Welsing solution is, see, if I could wave a magic wand, because we are trying to get the planet house straight. And so we can't play with sex. Sex is real good. Can I get any witnesses? You know what song popped into my head? See, in black people, I say our instrument is going to be truth and impeccable behavior. Meaning we know what to do with ourselves in all parts of our life. See, in other words, it's like military discipline. That's the only way we are going to win this war. Right now, we are under the influence of racism, white supremacy.
That's right.
Because the racism, white supremacy culture does not respect sex.
Oh, yeah.
Make it trashy. The trashier, the better. What about sex with horses? Black people are going to have to get onto First People's value system. See, I had a grandmother that said, black people don't do that. See, there was a time when black people knew what black people did and what white people did. And my grandmothers would say, wait a minute, black people don't do that. But we are now all up into the armpits of doing everything to be accepted. You see, as opposed to, wait a minute, what values do we need to bring justice to this planet? So the Creator made whoever are the parent people, they were given everything. Nobody has more than black people. Yes. In terms of basic what was given by the creative force in the universe. That's how black people can be the mothers and fathers of everybody. But like we see in psychiatry many times, the children take over the house. And the parents are running around, letting children be their guides, as opposed to straightening the house and putting the people who are supposed to have wisdom, have maturity, and be in charge, instead of those people being in charge of the house. So if I could wave a magic wand, you see, because when you don't take care of children, see, it's like our white children are raising hell all over the planet. Because presumably they were not parented. And so the only thing they can do is kill. Kill and destroy, and kill and destroy, and kill and kill and kill. You see, because they weren't taken care of. And all the little children who are made, and people talk about baby daddy, baby mommy, 6 baby daddies, 10 baby mommy. See, all those little children who don't get taken care of, that people want to say are bad. I tell the children, I don't know any bad children. Children are not born bad. But children can be made sad. And if they are sad, their behavior looks bad to grown-ups. See, all the little children, and black men don't feel bad when I say this. All the little children who don't have fathers, all the little boys. Child said, Dr. Welsing, I think I could do my homework if I just had an official father. Imagine somebody 10 saying that. If I just had an official father. Or a child saying, Dr. Welsing, if I had a father, he at least could have taught me what goes on under the hood of a car. Now that makes the psychiatrist want to fall out of their chair, fall on the floor and start crying. Do you see, or the child that came because the teacher said he's smart, the parent brings the child to the psychiatrist. And I said, sweetheart, don't you want to work hard in school so you can help black people? And this little boy, totally polite, said no. You know, he's supposed to say yes. So I said, why not, sweetheart? He said, if you try to help black people, you will be killed. He said, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, George Jackson, and I'm thinking IQ 285. See, like a little child peeping out at the world, seeing what really is going on. See, but the fathers are not there because of the war of racism and white supremacy. That necessitates killing the men. See, why the men? Because women cannot impose sexual intercourse. See, if I went to my purse, got a Uzi out, and I walked up to the gentleman and said, you're going to have sex right now. So why does it look like the women have an easier time? Because the women do not pose a threat to white genetic survival. But the men pose a perceived threat. So the war of racism and white supremacy is against black people in general, but black men in particular. And that's why the children don't have fathers. You see, but instead of, see, if we don't decode at a deep enough level.
That's right.
Then we don't know. See, again, if you sit down at the chessboard and you don't really understand the game, you don't know how to move your pieces, and you certainly don't know how to think 3 moves in advance. If you don't know enough about football to not go on a football field with a tennis racket, that's us. We're trying to deal with something that we don't have sufficiently depth understanding. You see, talking about police brutality as opposed to system. Total system of racism and white supremacy that informs police brutality, informs gentrification, informs closing schools, informs closing hospitals. That's all under the same umbrella. Just like all the pieces on the chessboard, all the players on the football field are a part of the game if the game is understood. So this is what we have to try to figure out. So I've been talking about revolutionary black sex, the new black sex. That's what the people want to send me home. See, but people producing children they can't take care of is no different than slavery. See, in slavery we were fed so that we would breed. Not so that there would be maximal development of the black genetic and constitutional potential. No, make a slave. You see, and for all the people who play with sex, the joke is on the offspring. Because the child who is not taken care of will begin to wage war against the community.
Yes.
You see, so adding up all the killings. See, now we don't really know who was really doing the killing. See, people, there was an ad a number of years ago in one of the Washington, D.C. papers, and it had a full-page ad, and it was a picture of a dark brown-skinned young black man with kind of cut-off pants, shoes, sneakers untied, and it said, "Life is precious, pass it on." And then it had arrows going to eyes. How many eyes are needed? How many lungs are needed? How many hearts are needed? Are you all with me? Worth more dead than alive. So we don't know who. All you do is wake up and read the newspaper. You see black male's body found. So who might have been riding around in the middle of the night? You see, person shot in the back of the head, not in the mid-body, so that the organs would be intact. That could be transferred, transplanted. See, so we are now in our desire to be accepted and have white supremacy acceptable thought. No thought that will disturb a person who's classified as white. That's when we get in trouble. See, and I also say that we are in a critical period in our history. We are on a genocide slide. See, they can have cause events and try to flush black people out of the street, yelling and screaming, and then just pick them all up and take them to a concentration camp. And I say instead of doing that, there are a lot of people who classify themselves as white who say they're not racist. Now, they haven't been given assignments by black people before. But I say they're assignments. If you are not a racist, then your responsibility is to stop. Identify and stop the ones who are.
That's right.
The black people are going to stay there. See, for every white person who's in bed with a black person, see, there are little tests that you can perform. People will say, "Dr. Welsing, how can I help?" And I say, tell black people what white people talk about when they're no black people. See, and that's a little test. I know nobody in this room is in bed with a white person, but if you have a friend, tell a friend that they can perform a test in the middle of a sex act. The black person read, what do white people talk about? When there are no black people around, the sex act is because that's a survival memoir. A white professor at American University, they had a program at one of the prisons in Virginia. And, you know, maybe Black History Month, I was invited to speak, I talked about racism. And so this female professor, white, was driving me home. And she said, Dr. Welsing, I hate to admit it. She said, on all social occasions. On all, she didn't say occasionally. She said, on all social occasions, when white people are together, and there are no black people around. She said, we are talking negatively about black people. And the assumption is that everybody present is in agreement. Yes. I didn't say, let me out of this car. No, I said, I understand. I say, you are talking code about white genetic survival. You see, but the mistake, just like the mistake that Semites of the Jewish religion made, they wanted to be accepted. They wanted things to be post-racial. But Adolf Hitler wanted white genetic survival.
Right.
By any means necessary.
Right.
So you can look up on your iPhone, Wannsee Conference. That was a conference held in a suburb outside of Berlin, where all the Nazi leadership talked about how they were going to kill 11 million people. Polite, sandwiches, secretaries, tea. See, this is the big secret. And this is what black people need to understand, not for the purpose of hate, but for being deeply in touch with reality, so that other kinds of decision making and planning can take place. Yes. Yes. Are we in the last hour? We're in the last hour. The last supper, the last hour. Question and answers. Does anybody have any comment, question, or answer? Please stand and talk real loud.
I do. I have a comment. Do I have to?
Thank you very much for your comment.
Can everybody hear?
No. Well, hello. I just want to thank you for
Real loud, so you got that.
Dr. Welsing, I just want to thank you for your beautiful, outstanding person you are. And I'm glad that I'm in the same generation with you. My question is how do we begin to work with white people to address this? And I'm wondering, do you know any white folks that are really doing this work? Because I work with a mixed group of people, and sometimes I think we gotta talk to white folks too. And we had Tim Wise come to the school that I work at. And are you familiar with his work? And I'll sit down and just listen.
Tim Wise said about Frances Welsing that Dr. Welsing just talks a lot of pseudoscientific bullshit. Now, the person who conveyed this to me, they have a blog program or something, and they told me that Tim had said that he was a racist. And so my response was that Tim says he's a racist, and so that's the comment I would expect.
Exactly.
You see, but black people need white saviors. That's how Jim Jones was able to kill one guy. See, so there are different experiments that are conducted for the black people who need white saviors. You see what I'm saying? So that's all I have to say. Now let me say this. See, black people, it would be like the Semites of the Jewish religion in Nazi Germany talking about how they're going to save the Germans. When they didn't have the thinking and the understanding to save themselves. See, which is a product of if you want to be accepted by other people more than you want to respect yourself, then you can be in great difficulty. You see, and so wanting to be accepted as white. Like I was saying, if I invented 3 pills, the first pill, now this is on a planet with a majority of people of color. So the first pill that I invent will turn you white overnight. You take it on Monday. The second pill will give you long, straight hair. The third pill will give you so-called white features. I would be the wealthiest person on the planet. All I have to do is be on eBay. They would sell all over India, all over China, all over South America, all over Africa, all over Central America, and all over this area of the world. Because at the 90+% level, racism, white supremacy has been successful in teaching people of color to hate themselves. And the willingness, see, white supremacy will come to a halt by the time I get back to DC tomorrow. If the non-white people were saying we will not injure each other. All over Asia, all over Central America. We don't do that anymore. See, we used to hate ourselves and hate each other. So all that was required was that white supremacy come and bring us a gun and bring us drugs or whatever is the local currency. But we don't do that anymore. White supremacy will be over. See, white people have asked me, well, Dr. Welsing, you say that we're fewer than 1/10. Now, how is it that we are able to control the 9/10 on the planet? I said, well, let's consider everything. It could be that you're smarter. Could be. But I don't think so. See, but you have been successful in programming the thoughts of the 9/10. So that the 9/10, here are the 9/10, and here's the 1/10. This is a tiny minority, but the 9/10 have been programmed to give their support to the 1/10. And so then the 1/10 become more powerful even though they are the numerical minority. Because these people have been programmed to hate themselves all over the entire planet. So we can give white supremacy an A+. And they have been successful. All the people of color hate themselves. See, and if you don't think we do, let me just quickly go through this. Basic behaviors. Stop name calling one another. Stop gossiping about one another. Stop squabbling with one another. I sound like Bill Cosby. Stop cursing one another. Stop being discourteous to one another. Stop being disrespectful to one another. I call these exercises in Black mental health and Black self-respect and building a powerful culture. Stop stealing from one another. Stop robbing one another. Stop fighting one another. Stop killing one another. Stop using and selling drugs to one another. Stop Black children from thinking that as children, they can be adequate mothers and fathers. See, you need to be old. 30, 35, no more than 2, no closer together. Stop pretending that racism and white supremacy does not exist. Okay. So those are the things that Black people decide to do that instead of trying to correct white people. Black people. Black person. See, sometimes the debate be quiet, please. Stop. Black people think, you know, we need to get some land of our own. White supremacy owns the whole planet. You can't go in white supremacy's house and say, I want these rooms. But I say everybody can cover the ground where their feet are. See, your brain is atop your feet. And so if everybody just stands their ground, with understanding racism, white supremacy, you don't have to pay their dues. Just stand your ground. There's an African proverb that says, when spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion.
Yes, Dr. Welsing, and just appreciate you and Dr. DeGrew, and actually Black Genius who answered my question, which was, what is it that we can do in our daily lives as a solution to white supremacy? And you just
okay. And then see the self-respect. I say self-respect is more powerful than a nuclear weapon. See, you don't know self-respect can have a mother. The child is under a car. Her self-respect allow her to lift that car by herself off of that baby, meaning her intention plus her self-respect. Yes.
My name is Samantha. Thank you for being here to bring us all this awesome information. Have 2 quick questions. One, what do you think about young people and social media? I saw that Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of social media, he gave $100 million to the city of Newark, New Jersey, where I'm from. And I don't know if that was just a social community act of kindness, but just in general, what do you think about like social media and a lot of kids up there exposing their lifestyles, they're exposing their children, they put baby pictures up there, their party pictures, all of this, so it gives like white America even a better view into our social lifestyles, and people are just like putting anything up there. Then my next question is, have you ever
one at a time. in other words, we don't have a clue the extent to which white supremacy through technology has taken over what children are doing. You see what they're thinking. And it's not teaching self-respect. It's not teaching Black people to value and respect themselves. You see, when the children are holding this 24 hours a day and really the brain becoming addicted to all that activity on the screen. So it's like some parents, I see some parents who try to discipline children by taking the phone away. And the children almost act like they're drug addicts. You see screaming and screeching until they can get it back. And so then the control and the programming that is going on So I just say that people need to be aware. We are being programmed. People used to talk about eventually they're going to have everybody with a chip in their underwear. They got a chip. See, it's already happening with these electronic instruments. So I mean, we just have to be aware. And people really need, especially people with young people, children. Anything that the children are listening to, see, everybody needs to have a blackboard at home. And so, okay, well, let's put the words up on the blackboard that are in the song, so-called, that you're listening. Let's look at what it is that is being said. You see, where I was talking to some children in my office, I said, what's more important, the words or the beat? The beat. And I said, yeah, the words are sliding in. You see, and they're stuck in your brain computer, and they're guiding you. You see, so by the time people's brains get exercised, nigger and bitch and hoe and gangster and thug. You see, and then somebody wonders why is all this negative behavior just acting like it's nothing. The brain is being programmed. You see, you're nothing. Nigger, you're nothing. Oh no, that's a term of endearment. No, that isn't.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And the next question, have you ever sat down and have a conversation with Obama? One-on-one?
No, but I call him all the time.
I just want to make sure I'm teaching them the right things. So when I watched the incident that transpired during Ferguson, I witnessed the black mother beat her son in front of national television. And I witnessed that. And I hurt my feelings really bad. And I just wanted to know your opinion on it. I didn't feel like it was fair. And then I watched every talk show in America bring her on and cheer her on for beating her black child down the street. And as a single mother raising 4 black young men, I want to make sure I'm teaching them the right thing. I didn't understand it. And lastly, when Oprah called her personally to say, you know, I'm proud of you for what you did. It didn't sit well in my spirit when Bob was speaking about it. I feel like he stood up for himself. I just wanted to know your opinion concerning that matter.
Well, I think that that mother, on the spur of that moment, thought that if this child is out here, any police officer can kill him. You see, and I don't think that she necessarily did a whole lot of thinking about it. But the choice was, do I get him and bring him home? Or do they kill him? And so then he comes home from the morgue. You see, like looking at the total picture, and then I was reminded when we were growing up, the discussion that used to go on in my house, my grandmother, my father's mother, who lived with us. And my father used to talk humorously about, there was a race riot in Chicago. In 1919, there were a lot of race riots going on. And so my father used to talk with Child's mother and say that, you know, he would have participated or he was there and his mother made him come home. In other words, is my son going to be dead? Or am I going to bring him home? And I think that that was what was going on. You see, based on what is happening in the country, that is what is taking place. So maybe a lot of people would have done something different.
Do you think the overall message that it sent though was that if you stand up for yourself, you have to be beat down as a black man? Or I guess I'm just trying to get to, you feel like he stood up for himself and then.
Well, he was doing something. I'm not faulting him.
Right.
You see, but how many mothers would run out in the street to get their sons versus having their sons lose their lives? You see what I'm saying? And a lot of times I think that the women begin to look tough because the men have been taken out of the situation. You see, so in other words, rather than just condemn, rather than just condemn any black person, even the president. It's like the president has had more death threats than any president in history. You see, he's the person who has had people somehow magically get across the fence. Drones flying into the White House. You see, all of those, as far as I'm concerned, are life threats. Bullets going into the residence at the White House. You see, and who knows? Buddy, if you try to talk about racism, you got a nice life. You got two nice children. Now you bring up race, and we will kill you. So in other words, looking at the big picture, you see, and then thinking about what is the situation that we are in as a group. You see, this is war being waged against us. And so that may, help reflect on what the answer is. Okay.
Can you limit one question because there's a lot of people?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm sorry, limit.
Okay, one question.
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Dewan. I'd like to tell you thank you for your time. That's the most important thing you give. You can't get back, and your insight for you and Dr. DeBrew. My question is, can you speak to maybe the psychosis? I want some understanding of how can some of our most brilliant black minds, our intellectuals, our scholars, and leaders, such as Sheikh Anta Diop, Francis Fannin, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and Kwame Nkrumah, just for a few, who developed so much time, gave so much time and upliftment for our people and sacrificed their lives, put their lives on the line, and sacrificed their careers and turned around and marry European women. I'm serious. I really baffle that because listen, when you read something from Sheikh Anta Diop, I'm like, you went through hell to prove that the Kemetics, they were black. And you read Francis Fannin, black skin, white mask, and all this greatness, but you had white women. I don't get it. I really don't.
What white women want is what white women get. Under the system of racism, a white person said to me recently, Dr. Welsing, a battalion of white women can control all of the black men. I mean, in other words, that's the power of white supremacy. See, if everybody close your eyes. Okay, now I'm going to say something. All you have to do is track what goes in your mind. The most powerful, the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. The most handsome man you've ever seen. Now, what image went in front of your eyes? No black person, please don't tell me that. Wait a minute. See, in other words, we are either in a system where we are being programmed. See, I can ask the same question, close your eyes, and what image goes in front of your eyes? That's God. It's not a crystal black person. So this is just a programming, and so there's been programming. Black men have been lynched and castrated for thinking they wanted to think about considering thinking about it. And so that's like liberation, but it's at the same time being overwhelmed by white supremacy. You see, and so that's why, just like I mentioned, the gentleman that I know, knew a long time ago, said a white woman goes with a Harvard degree. That's what the rap people sing about. You want a mutt. You don't want somebody that looks black. You see, so you've got to, move around and ask the artists. And just think about, look, we're being programmed by racism and white supremacy. Let's try to change that program. Okay. Oh, down they can't. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes.
Honor to the ancestors and thanking you so much.
Thank you.
I just have a question about you were speaking about a lot about our self-hate as people, and as you as a doctor working with the youth. I have 5 children. I have 4 sons and a daughter, and I noticed my younger sons have brought home friends, African-American male friends who are foster children and wanting me to take them in. Have you noticed in your career as a psychiatrist the devaluing of our youth and foster care and it becoming a growing problem? And can you speak on that? And I just want to say to the sister that stood up before me, I just think that's awesome, because you don't see that a lot where we adopt our own children.
See, in other words, what I want black people to focus on is not playing with sex and producing children that we are not ready to take care of. You see, in other words, when the house is flooded, you don't get a mop. You got to get to the source of where the water is coming from. So people, our children are up. I've seen albums of pictures. Do you want this child? Look at all these little children. Do you want this one? Do you want this one? Let's see, do you want this one? See, now what we have to understand is that we were breeding during slavery. But slavery was a phase of white supremacy, and people are breeding without understanding and without thinking about it. You see, so people can make little children, and then I'm tired, or this ain't mine. I don't want it. This one is too dark. I mean, all of those different things that, see, I say that it starts before the sperm meets the egg. What am I doing? And nobody has to feel bad. We're just beginning to talk about racism, white supremacy, and the codification of our behavior so that we win from our side of the chessboard. See, you know, the people who classify themselves as white, they got a system for their own survival. That doesn't include our maximal development. Now the question is, how can we teach that and help our young people understand? Ever so gently. See, when you play with sex, the joke is going to be on the baby. Right. The baby is going to feel abandoned. I told a class of teenagers one time that it's better to get a machete and cut that baby in half. Now, no matter how cruel that sounds, that baby will feel pain for an instant versus rejection. 365 days of the year times 25 years, and people are saying, why did my mother love me? Or can you explain it, Dr. Welsing? I'm 50 years old. No, see, in other words, nobody needs to feel bad. Just say, that's interesting. Now let me be able to think about it. You see, so we have to, in other words, those white people have a lot of money to adopt children. Black people don't have a whole lot of money. And so I would not put the onus on them. I put the pressure on, let us begin to think about what we're doing. Teaching our children to think about what we are doing. This is like a little teenager said to me, I'm sorry, Dr. Welsing, but it hits you, yeah, you gotta go there. You know, those are children. And I said, sweetheart, look, I'm sure you've been on a bus and you felt the urge to move your bowels. Now it's hitting you, but you don't go with it. You use every muscle in your body, every nerve to get over it, that this is not the time nor the place. You see, so it's like, no, we've got to stop breeding. See, stop breeding, stop breeding. That was what they used on us in formal slavery.
Right.
That's what they're using on us to fill the prisons.
Right.
Because just as sure as somebody, I say, you can go in any prison and do a survey and ask the prisoners, black, how old was your mother when she had her first child? And second question, was your biological father in the home? The first one is going to be a very young person, not bad person. See, if people don't get their emotional needs met by their parents, then they become sex obsessed, because that's the next step in being close. The baby comes in the world knowing what closeness is. The closest human relationship is a baby inside of a womb for 9 months. The baby comes in the world smart. Now you mistreat the baby, don't give the baby, get away from me, you're too big. Talking to somebody 18 months old. Right. Get away from me. You see, so I want the people to be 30, ladies, men 35. You can't get your license until you're married to have sex. You can't get to after you get a license to drive, etc. Okay. Hi, how are you? Okay.
So I'm really inspired by you, and ISIS papers really woke me up, so I want to thank you for that.
Okay.
And I have to comment, and I have a question. So a lot of what was mentioned, I think, between you and DeGray, inspired me to ask you, well, first I'll comment. So the same amnesia that we kind of have about slavery and about the systems that plague us, don't you think that there's also an amnesia that we have when it comes to the resistance that we need to practice in order to see a change in our behavior? You know, because it seems as though we're continuing to, like you said, we're in a defensive, offensive mode, but our defensive mode seems to be very, like we're really hiding. And I believe we need to take up more resistance and more self-defense measures and preparedness measures, and people seem to not talk about that at all. What do you think are real solutions for our self-defense and preparedness measures? Because, you know, we know what the problem is, and well, not all of us do, but we're starting to wake up to see what the system is and what the problem is, but we're not prepared with actual protocols to defend ourselves on those.
See, I would say the vast majority of us as black people, we're not seeing that racism, white supremacy is a problem until it steps on our toes. The rest of the time we are in wanting to assimilate and be accepted by. You see, so we're not thinking about resistance. It's only when a war is being conducted against you and you become conscious of the war do you think about resistance. So Neely Fuller talks about the 4 modes of response to racism and white supremacy. Submission to, that means it's too much for me, I don't want to think about it, tell Welsing to shut up. The second is cooperation with, that means as long as I get a good job, I know it's a problem out there, but I got a good job and I'm able to. Resistance to, that means that the person is fully conscious of racism, white supremacy, and they have adopted a stance of moving against it. You see, but maybe they don't want to die. Destruction of, those are all the people, Malcolm X, George Jackson, all the people who have died, they went up the line, and they crossed the line, continuing to resist. But I would just say most people do not see themselves. They want to become a part of a system. But black people cannot be incorporated into white people's system without the white people being genetically annihilated.
Thank you. So, okay, so that, can I have one? Okay,
Dr. Welsing, I honor you today as the matriarch of Black psychology. And also, I want to honor Dr. Guru as well today. The information is so profound. I work as a family partner with probation youth in the juvenile justice system. I also work in the adult system. Most of what I see is young white women coming straight out of school, and they are dealing with our children. And I want to know, and please forgive me if I bumble on my question, but what is the role of Black psychologists, therapists, and so forth who really understand what's happening to our children? Where is the push and the move from the psychologists, from the therapy community for our children? I don't see it. And I just want your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm the only psychiatrist. No, there's not a movement. There's not a movement. It's like, I guess about 3 jobs that I had, including when I was a professor in the Department of Pediatrics at Howard University College, that I thought I was going to get tenure. And then I heard on the faculty grapevine that I wasn't going to get tenure because of my political ID. So I go running to the dean's office. Dean, man, I know you know I want tenure. A little naive self. And I said, but I hear on the grapevine that I'm going to be denied tenure because of my political ID. I said, what political IDs? I thought I was helping black people, right? With the Cress theory. He said, that paper that you wrote. And he didn't even know the name. I said, you mean the Cress theory of color confrontation? Is that what you're on the paper? And he said, yes. I said, well, what's wrong with the paper? He said, it doesn't make sense for you to say that white people are envious of black people because of their color. And I said, but I don't ask black people what white people think. I have all kinds of letters from white people saying you're right. You see, but in other words, it was not the political thing that the people who funded the university wanted to be. You see, just like I applied for a job in a clinic in a black community, and all the people who were treating the black families and black children were white. And so I'm talking to the director. I'd like to work in the clinic. And so he said, well, you have an excellent reputation as a psychiatrist, but all of our staff is white. And you talk about racism, and you make our staff uncomfortable. So no, you can't have the job. So I just laughed. I said, you tell me I have here in a black community, all the patients are black, but all the staff is white. And you tell a black psychiatrist that they have an excellent reputation, but they can't work because the white people want to be uncomfortable. Talking about what black people need to hear. You see, but that's across the board. No black psychiatrist in a responsible situation can talk about racism. American Psychiatric Association doesn't want to talk about racism. American Psychological, American Sociological. You see what I'm saying? But black people can't have mental health unless they understand racism. They can't have in other words, those who can push, those who are willing to push.
Welsing, thank you all for your years of service and commitment to raising black consciousness. Can you shed some light on this thought? If we create our own reality, our unconscious thoughts, do you think that if we focus on fear, that we create more reality for fear for ourselves?
If we focus on fear, will we create more fear? That's nice. Let me say. If a team focuses on the fact that they lost the game, if they focus on the fact that they lost the game, is that going to help them win? I mean, in other words, if you focus on, losing, if you lost, and if you focus on losing, you can focus on losing so that what do we need to do to win?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? But it's like a lot of people have said, if you talk about white supremacy, then you make white supremacy a reality. That's just not true. White supremacy is a reality. You see, racism is a reality. If that problem is ever going to be solved, it will be because people look at it. See, Sigmund Freud, for example. Freud was a Semite of the Jewish religion. They were being persecuted, a long history of persecution in Europe. Sigmund Freud chose to focus on sex repression and what the id and the ego and the superego were doing. You see, as opposed to focus on, now these people say we're not white. And that's why they have been killing us, burning our establishments, and harming us for hundreds of years. Now we should be focusing on that. But if you want to be accepted, you won't focus on that. You'll just be killed.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Welsing and Dr. LaRue, for this fantastic opportunity to be here to hear you. Dr. Mamalana Karanga extends his greetings and blessings, and he wanted me to send that to you.
Okay.
The word black. In the 60s, black was being used. Our organization, as I always say, is black. But I know many other organizations now are shifting away from that. Could you give me a reason why and how would that be a detriment to the black community, omitting that and running away from that?
See, we are in a system of racism, white supremacy. People classify themselves as white. Do not play games about what they call themselves. They don't call themselves Euro-American. They don't even call themselves Caucasian. They call themselves white. That 5-letter word keeps them oriented as to what their issue is. White means tiny minority on the planet, genetic recessive, can experience genetic annihilation unless the black and the shades of black people are under control. So they're never confused. While we run around, no, well, what can we call ourselves so we don't have to face the problem? What name can we give? I'm mixed. Oh, I'm not black, I'm mixed. See, we're running like little children. Little children hear a big boom and they run because they're afraid. You see what I'm saying? And just we run away from reality because we're fearful as little children. So we got to try to get over
Thank you.
being afraid.
Hello. thank you for coming here. I'll make this very quick. I understand your theory on genetic annihilation, but if they really felt this way, why not kill us off and get it over with? Along with that, why are white men marrying Asian women in record numbers if genetic annihilation is possible?
Why, in other words, if you have a stance of superiority, one of the things that you would want to do so you keep feeling superior is looking at how inferiorized the black people are. So you got to have a certain number of them around to make you know you're superior and that they are, you know, that they're superior and that we're inferior. So every day you can just wake up and look around at the black people. You sure got inferiorize today. Nothing to worry about. You see now the white men who are with Asian women, they're looking around. They say, now China's on the move. We want to keep up with inside information. So we are marrying Asian women. They bow to us because they think that white is superior. I had patients some time ago, white male, who married a Japanese woman. And he said that he knew he was a racist, but he tried to go to the white psychiatrist and they would say, there's no such thing as racism. But he said he knew what he was doing inside of his family and the demeaning and degrading things that he would do with these Japanese females that were his wife and his children. So the Japanese ladies, so he said that he had an ongoing fantasy. And that fantasy was that he would ultimately be in some rural area of Mississippi, and the black people would make him king. The Japanese woman said, after they lost the war, the Japanese women were ashamed of Japanese men. Anyone that could get a white man was still better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon or good evening, Dr. Welsing. Thank you very much, Drew, for your presence here and uplifting us. I wanted to speak to the offensive part of what we need to do, because we're all on different levels of our journey in understanding what has happened in our Holocaust. And so when I look closely, because I've been on this journey since I recognized something was wrong when I was in my 20s, a long time ago. So I've arrived at now, in playing the offensive part of it, I've realized through a gentleman by the name of Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization. I just happened on another book he wrote called The Rebirth of African Civilization. I wondered if you knew about that book, because I think if we zeroed in on it, we will, just our fact that we're looking in a different direction and rising up, doing what we need to do collectively, even if we have to lock arms across the sea with those that have strengths that we don't have, can we not just lock them out, shun them? Because I think we have a problem with saying that we have to go to the same oppressor to ask them to educate us and our children. And why would I want them to anyway?
Well, again, don't you think, see, I think it's all tied up with how do we really understand racism, white supremacy? You see, let's say if we, in this part of the world, were to say, well, let's link up with Africa. What's happening on the continent of Africa? What's happening on the continent is white supremacy has made this construct they call ISIS that goes in. There's supposed to be some enemy force with a black mask on their face. You see, raising havoc, killing people in barbaric acts. You see, we are told that this is some unknown, powerful group. Interesting, we name it ISIS. You see, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, tearing up Africa. You see, I say gentrification is going on in Africa. Moving the black people up into Europe where there are no resources. And the people who classify themselves as white will come down into Africa. You see, but all over, wherever it is we are, we're not understanding. You see, we think that we can be blended into and accepted by. And all of it is led, and I'm not against anybody's religion as such. I'm baptized underwater Baptist. You see, so that as long as we have this concept that God is white, you see, and from whom all blessings flow, wash me whiter than snow. Oh, precious is the flow. You see, love's red and yellow, black and white. See, this is very powerful. This was given to us when we were being whipped and beaten and raped and castrated and pain 24/7. You see, and so the idea that there's some person that looks just like the slave master that's going to come along and save us, you see, was a very powerful brain implant. You see, and so we are under that. The people on the continent are massively under that. You see, where I say racism, white supremacy is not understood, and drugs to traffic, and guns to kill one another. You see, so we don't have a critical mass of black people anywhere on the planet that have escaped that programming. And I say this is what, my effort is one person. Let me try to talk about it as much as I can, but we have to build a critical mass of black people who respect themselves as black. We're not there, not any place near there, and that's okay. But it's like whosoever will work on, I got to build my self-respect, and along with that, my courage. You see, but this is the deficiency all over the planet. So again, if everybody, they say underground, overground. You see, whosoever teach and try to help. You don't have to belong to an organization, but don't fight with anybody. Don't get mad at another black person because they don't want to talk about racism. Just get on your skateboard and move to the next one. So everybody work as they can. And again, the spider webs unite in time of
Can't hear you. I was just saying my greetings. You have been on the front line for many, many years, and I'm a wellness worker in the community. How do you deal with the feelings of despair? Do you feel despair when you see our collective destruction?
No, I don't really feel despair. I mean, I just feel I'm doing my assignment. my mother asked me one time, my mother's deceased, retired Chicago public school teacher. My mother said, oh, where are you going, Francis? And I said, I'm going somewhere. Well, what are you going to talk about? Mom, you can only talk about one thing. Well, can you talk about something else? I said, no, Mom, that's my assignment. So I just, everybody has to deal with stuff, but I don't feel no way tired.